Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're digging into something maybe a bit different. We got some notes, some really interesting thoughts from Pastor Florin's sermon over at Agape Community Church.
Yeah, the one on John 14, but Jesus being the way.
Exactly. And, he kicked it off talking about the disciples feeling anxious and confused right at the start of that chapter. Jesus says, "Don't let your hearts be troubled." And that feeling he described, that kind of fog and uncertainty about what direction to go, I mean, wow, that hits close to home, right?
Oh, absolutely. Career, relationships, just figuring stuff out.
Yeah, it feels like so many people, maybe especially younger folks navigating everything, just feel lost sometimes,
Ah,
confused, like which way is up.
totally. And what's really fascinating, picking up on that sermon, is remembering that the first followers, they weren't called Christians right away.
Oh, yeah. What were they called?
They were known as followers of the way, which sounds really active, like a practice, almost an apprenticeship.
An apprenticeship. I like that.
So yeah, our dive today isn't just about quoting what Jesus said about being the way. It's more about, like, what does it actually mean to live that, to practice it, to apprentice under him for real practical direction when things feel, complicated.
Okay, so that's our mission then. Let's unpack how Jesus isn't just like a helpful guide with a map,
Right.
but he's the actual path, and how figuring that out might actually help us, cut through some of that fog and uncertainty in our own life, find some clarity.
Sounds good.
So Pastor Florence started right there, John 14, verses 1 to 4. Jesus is talking to his closest friends, and they're already feeling worried.
Yeah, the mood is tense.
And he tells them, don't worry, basically. And then he says something like, you know the way to the place where I am going, which sounds straightforward.
It sounds straightforward, but then, boom, Thomas immediately pipes up. You got to love Thomas.
Aha, yeah. Always the direct one.
He just says, Lord, we don't know where you're going. So how can we possibly know the way? It just lays bare that confusion, doesn't it? They're right there with Jesus, but they're still missing something huge.
And man, don't we feel that too? Maybe not about where Jesus is physically going, but when we hear about God having big plans for us, or when we face those big life decisions.
Like what job to take or how to fix a relationship.
Exactly. It feels just as foggy. We're like, okay, great idea, Jesus, but how? What's the actual next step? It's such a human feeling.
It really is. And that's the perfect setup for Jesus's big reveal in verse 6.
Right. This is the core of it.
He says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one come to the Father except through me. And Pastor Florin really hammered this point. It's the way, the truth, the life.
Not just a way.
Exactly. Not one option out of many. He's claiming to be the exclusive source, the sustainer, the only gateway to God. It completely reframes it. We're not following directions anymore. We're following a person.
Okay, that's a huge statement. But even then, the confusion isn't quite gone, is it? Because Philip jumps in next.
Yeah, Philip's like, okay, cool. Lord, just show us the Father and we'll be good,
Yeah.
Like, give us the visual proof.
Yeah, and Jesus' response is almost sad. He says, don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you such a long time?
Yeah, it's poignant. It highlights that it's not just about hearing the words. It's about truly recognizing him, seeing him for who he is in the middle of everyday life.
So if Jesus is asking them, don't you know me? And we feel lost and confused, looking for direction, how do we actually get to know him practically? Like, what are we supposed to be looking for? What's the evidence, especially when we're feeling troubled?
That's a great question. And it leads right into what Pastor Florin called formidable evidence. It's right there in verses 9 to 11, when Jesus says, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father.
Yeah.
He wasn't just pulling that out of thin air. He was tapping into something really deep in their history, their Jewish roots. Think about the Exodus story.
Okay, Moses, wilderness.
Right. How did God guide the Israelites? Often as this, it's like pillar of cloud or as the angel of God. And this angel, this presence, was described as the way for them. Crucially, it said God's name was in him.
Okay, name meaning like his authority, his essence.
Exactly. His authority, his presence, his very being. It was God's presence leading them.
Wow. So Jesus is basically saying,
Guys, it's me. That presence that led your ancestors, that was me. I've been the way all along, and I am the way now for you and for everyone after.
whoa. Okay, that connects the dots in a big way. It makes it less abstract, more continuous. Like he's always been the guide.
Precisely. And then he drives it home in verse 11. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. And here's the key part. Or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves.
Ah, so it's not just blind faith.
Not at all. Pastor Florin called it evidence-based faith. It's an invitation to open your eyes, look at the evidence past and present, see what I've done, see what the Father is doing through me.
So the action step then is actively looking, pursuing evidence-based faith, like you said, looking around in our own lives, in the world, seeing where God might be working and actually responding to that.
Yes. It shifts us from just passively hoping to actively seeing and participating, which, if you're feeling lost, is pretty empowering, isn't it? To look for those fingerprints, those signs of God's work.
Definitely. It gives you something concrete to engage with.
What about for you? When you think about evidence, what kind of things come to mind?
Sometimes it's unexpected solutions to problems, or finding strength you didn't know you had, or just seeing goodness persist in really hard situations. Small things, maybe, but they add up.
Yeah, me too. Those little moments of grace or unexpected provision, that's where I often see it, if I'm actually paying attention.
Okay, so we're looking for evidence. But then comes this part that honestly can feel a bit tricky, the misunderstood promise in verses 12 to 14.
Ah, yeah, the big ones.
Jesus says, "Whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things. And also, you may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." I mean, those sound huge, maybe even unbelievable.
They are huge, and you're right, they get misunderstood a lot. Let's take the works first. Back in verses 10 and 11, Jesus links the works directly to the Father working through him via his words.
Okay.
He says, "The words I say, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work." So the works aren't just like Jesus's personal magic tricks. They're the words of Jesus that produce the actions of the Most High God.
So the words themselves do things.
When spoken with his authority, yes, they are God's work in action. And here's the apprenticeship connection. Jesus is saying that his words, when genuinely believed and spoken by his apprentices, by us, will continue to produce God's actions. Maybe even, as he says, greater things, because the message spreads beyond just him.
So we become participants in doing God's work through his words. That's a really active role. It's not just believing about him, but participating with him.
Exactly. It makes faith incredibly practical. It gives us something to do, a way to join in what God is already doing.
That feels really relevant for people feeling maybe powerless or like their lives don't have much impact. It gives purpose.
It does. And then there's the asking in my name part.
Right. Which sometimes gets twisted into that sort of name it and claim it idea, like a magic formula.
Unfortunately, yeah. But that completely misses the point. Asking in his name isn't about tacking his name onto our wish list. It signifies this deep connection, this spiritual union and intimacy, as Pastor Florin put it. Meaning his name is in us and we are in him. We're operating out of that closeness. So when we ask in his name, our requests are naturally going to be aligned with his works, his will, his glory, not just our own selfish desires.
So it's asking from a place of partnership, not dictation, like a servant asking how they can help the master's work, not telling the master what to do.
Exactly. It's about aligning our prayers and actions with what God is doing, discerning his work and asking how we can be part of it.
Okay, this really lands that whole apprenticeship idea hard. It's not passive, it's active participation. The works are us joining in what Jesus is doing through his words, and the asking is aligning ourselves with that work in prayer.
You got it.
This feels like it offers something really solid for people wrestling with anxiety about, well, everything. Family stuff, job uncertainty, politics, relationships, past hurts. It gives a concrete way to engage, right? To feel like you're learning the trade from the master carpenter himself.
Precisely. Pastor Florin tied it together perfectly. Do the works I have been doing, and you may ask in my name. It's both. Look for where God is working, join in through your actions and words, and align your prayers with that same work. It's dynamic, it's hands-on.
Rolling up our sleeves, basically.
Yeah, getting involved alongside the master, not just sitting on the sidelines hoping things work out.
Hey.
So if we wrap this up, what we've dived into is that Jesus isn't just a guide, he is the way. He offers clarity when we're confused. He invites us to this evidence-based faith to actually see his work around us.
Both in history and right now?
Right. And maybe most importantly for today, he calls us into this active apprenticeship. He empowers us to actually do the works that his words produce and to ask anything in his name, meaning aligned with his purposes.
So the final thought for you listening is, where might that apply this week? What work, small or large, might Jesus be inviting you to step into? What situation needs his words, his action, maybe through you?
Yeah, and what might you need to ask for in his name to align yourself with that work?
It's about taking that step, isn't it? Actually choosing to be the carpenter's apprentice in your everyday life, recognizing him, partnering with him. What's one small practical step you could take this week? Something to think about.